I'm Lucille Saracino, the president of the Rotary Club. Very proud to be president. This is a great program tonight. I had a little taste of it yesterday. You're in for a great treat. So but you know what? We always start our meeting. I bring it to order, and we start with the flag and the Pledge of Allegiance. My dad came from this country when he came to this country when he was only 17 years old. And he used to say, America is the greatest country in the world, and he's right. So I'd like to do the Pledge of Allegiance. You could all see, you can see my little flag here, right? And let's start with, I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. And also, we always start, Rotary has, it's called the four-way test, and it's of all the things we say and do. Is it the truth? Is it fair to all concerned? Will it bring goodwill and better friendships? And will it be beneficial to all concerned? So welcome everybody to another Rotary program. As you all know, we do this twice a month, second and fourth Wednesday of the month. And we have local people, and then we have people the other side of the globe. We just want to keep you informed, and we'd hope that you keep coming back. Maybe you'd like hanging around us and think about becoming an associate member. We could talk about that another time, but I would really hope that you look us up on our website and find out what we do. We do have 7 areas of focus, and we give back to the community. So just before I turn it over to our speaker, I want to say we had some sad news about Reverend Ray Lowe, the pastor of St. Luke's for 39 years. Beautiful, beautiful man. We also know that he was a co-founder of the Scituate Club. We're 52 years old already. So Ray was that. So just so the members know, we will be sending a donation to his memorial fund. And excuse me, and a shout out to JD, because JD, you sent that amazing email on the club's finances, and you clarified a lot for us. So thank you there. And my last bit of business is to say a big thank you to Gingy Jackmandrea and to Seth, who worked with Matt and I yesterday. We thought it was going to be 20 minutes, but it turned out to be an hour. Wasn't my fault, though.
Seth was very patient with us.
Oh, yeah, he was. So thank you, Seth. All right, so now I'm turning it over to Matt. And Matt, I want you to tell us a little bit about your life or your highlights, how you started out in this business, and then take it away.
Well, I don't know where to start. I'm born in Scituate as, I guess, all the rest of my family, all the way back to 1715, I think it was.
Wow.
So I'm an old-time Scituate resident. And I went to university, graduated from Scituate High School, went to the University of Massachusetts, came out of the university, and I started to work in Plymouth, teach school in Plymouth and Marshfield, and then finally in Scituate. I taught for 19 years. And the last 4 or 5 years, I also worked at Building 19 because my wife, Rosie, saw an ad and says, go over to talk to this guy, and we hit it off. And so I drew pictures for Building 19 for a long time. Well, when we started, we just had it was a warehouse indoor yard sale. And as time went on, it became very successful. At one time, they had 21 stores. Well, what was wonderful about it is that I was unsupervised. And we had 2 other guys that worked with me that drew cartoons, and we tried to entertain each other. And it was hilarious. We made ads that were funny. And Jerry Ellis, the owner, figured it out that was bringing in customers, and we were very successful. And it went on till 1970. In 1970, I decided I was going to work at home because I didn't like to work in there because the atmosphere had changed a little bit because the sun had begun to take over. But we still had good times by drawing cartoons and sending them in by the email. Went fine. And at the final part of the story is they went out of business. They planned for about 3 years to go out of business, and they did. There was a little touch of Donald Trump in that. They made some money in going out of business. But I've always drawn cartoons. And after that, Mary Ford asked me to draw cartoons for the Cohasset Mariner. And I started with the Mariner, and I went on with the Scituate Mariner. And 3 or 4 years, I drew editorial cartoons. And I'm very proud of them because they were all local stuff, all local issues. And it's easy to do national issues because national is so crazy. But it's harder to do local issues. And we had some interesting times. And I don't know, I have stopped doing that for 2 or 3 years. And but it was a wonderful time. It's great. And been a member of the Historical Society, and we put some of these together for the Historical Society. And this one we did a long time ago. And I put it together again. And in the process, I get it all fouled up. So we may have a few mistakes as we go through this. So be patient. There's the Earth, okay? You can see why they call it the big blue marble. And that's because 79% of the surface is covered with water. And its oceans hold 95.5% of all the water. And that's all salt water. And 98% of the oceans are unexplored. We know as much about the oceans as we do about Mars. It's all unexplored. The surface of the Earth is smoother than a billiard ball. And the ocean is really deep. Let me advance on it. Here's the Still Wagon Bank. Can you see my little arrow? That's how deep it is. It only goes to 300 feet. It's very relatively shallow. Now, this is the average depth of the ocean is about here. And real deep in the ocean live giant squid and sperm whales. And to give you an idea how deep the ocean is, the average depth of the ocean, this is an airplane, not because an airplane goes down to the bottom of the ocean, but that's how high above the Earth an airplane flies. This is approximately the size of the World Trade Center. The Titanic, which we've heard about, was found below the average depth of the ocean. But they did find it. Below this depth, it's totally dark. It's black. There is no light down there at all, except from squid, who generate their own light, and which is fantastic. The deeper you go, the stranger things get. The Challenger Deep near Guam is 36,000 feet deep. Think about it, very deep. And that's where the strange creatures live. When the old seamen came back to the map makers years ago, they tried to explain to these map makers what these creatures that they saw were. And the map makers, being artists, tried to draw them up. And that's, I can remember seeing old maps like this and saying there was no creatures like that. That's crazy. No, there were creatures like that. For instance, this creature. This is an artist who has never been on the ocean. This is an artist's version of a spouting whale. Yes, a whale has 2 nostrils, and these are 2 whales. I don't know whether these are 2 whales or 1 whale. You can't tell. Because, as you can see, the part that we see about a whale is just a smaller part above the ocean. So you can see why the artist made up this part. Anyway, how about this one? Here's a creature that we know came from the imagination of the artist, except here's an alive version of that. The Goblin Shark. It's pretty close. Pretty close. But how about this creature? It has the head of a horse, bumps along the body, and the body of a snake. That's the picture of the sea serpent. There can't be anything like that. Can there? We'll see. There are new creatures that are constantly being discovered every day, like the coelacanth. That was thought to be oh, there it is. That was thought to be out of instinct for many years until one was found in 1965, and they dig them up now. They don't dig them up; they fish for them, and they get them off the coast of Africa. Coelacanth. The megamouth shark. This has never been seen before 1975, and it's only been, these 3 photographs is all we've got of The megamouth shark, a really strange creature, but it does exist. How about the giant tube worms that live 5,000 feet below the surface of the ocean? They're 8 feet tall. These look like little small things. No, these are 8 feet tall. A man would be dwarfed by these things. They live near, well, what you call smokers. It's like volcanoes in the bottom of the ocean, and they raise the temperature of the ocean very high. And these tube worms take their nourishment from the smoke of the volcanoes. Almost impossible to believe. These have just been recently photographed. Now we talk about the giant squid, which has only been seen a few times. There's a bigger version called the colossal squid. As I said before, these giant squid generate their own light. They have 10 tentacles. Their suckers have little teeth in them. I always thought that they had suction cups. No, these grab you by, they have teeth in these things. It's not something you want to get very intimate with. Now, how big can they grow? They say they've seen them 45 feet long, and this is what they look like in comparison to a house. Now, the giant sperm whale feeds off these creatures. And it was just found out recently that the sperm whale paralyzes the giant squids by making a noise, by sonic booms. And they paralyze the squid and then they could eat it. I just saw the other day on YouTube, and of course, if it's on YouTube, there's some question whether it's true, but this guy said he was a diver and he went down and he dove with the sperm whales, and the sperm whales were very kind to him. They liked to see humans. But when he got close to him and he's put his hand out, the sperm whale clicked, made a giant click, and it paralyzed his hand until the next day. Yeah, it is hard to believe. Here's a picture of it. A mother sperm whale teaching the baby sperm whale how to hunt for squid. And that looks like a tentacle of a giant squid in its mouth. So they've been down very deep. How big can they grow? We don't know. When you see the word illustration, and this is the last time I'm going to tell you, if you see the word illustration, that means it may or may not be true. So this was sort of a faked up picture. But now we're constantly losing creatures every day. They go instinct. They go, what's the word? Not instinct. I'll think of it. The dodo was last seen in 1662. The dodo is always used as an example of a creature that went extinct. And that's because it couldn't fly and it lived on the island of Mauritius off Africa. The sailors would come ashore and just chase them around, grab them, and defeather them and eat them. And so the sailors ate up all these dodos. It's too bad. They're an interesting looking creature, and they say they're good eating. I saw a picture of Deloy's ape when I was in high school, and we had a homeroom in the library. And so I went through the encyclopedias, and there's only one photograph of this creature. And I saw this in a 1950s encyclopedia. Only picture that's ever been taken of that. How about the Tanzanian wolf who went extinct in 1935? It's not a dog, and it's not a tiger, and it's not a wolf. It's related, its closest relative is the kangaroo because it has a pouch. And you can see it's different from dogs. It looks like a cross between a dog and a crocodile with that large mouth. Went extinct in 1935. And some monsters that we know about never existed at all, like the Loch Ness monster. This picture down here was the picture, the serpents, not the serpent, the surgeon's photo. Turns out he took a toy submarine and attached a fake neck onto it, put it out into Loch Ness and took a picture of it. Now, Loch Ness monsters have been reoccurring since that time. This is an example of, this picture is probably 50 years old, and they accuse that picture of being a Loch Ness monster, but it's really just a tree limb. But here's a recent picture of the Loch Ness monster. And it's splashing around in the water. Nobody really knows what this is. This was taken in 2016. So it may exist, it may not exist. I don't know. Here's an example of a fake creature that was made out of a tree limb. I saw this on YouTube also about an unknown creature that they couldn't explain where it came from. Well, it came from a forest, is where it came from. How about Bonham's Fiji Mermaid? How many of these creatures were made in the taxidermist office? Every one of his museums had one, and every one of them was fake. This is my favorite, the Mongolian death worm. It grows to 5 feet long. It kills its prey with electric shocks from its eyes, and it's made out of clay. It's not really a monster at all. This is fascinating. The Staten Island Ferry Disaster Museum. This is a real place. And they had this real thing at one of the wharfs for the Staten Island Ferry. And it says, dedicated to the loving memory of the passenger crew of this ship that went down when it was attacked by a giant octopus. It's fake. It's not true. It's made for the tourists. And there are some monsters that we don't know exactly whether they existed or not. Like this one. In the Congo in 1959, a British helicopter pilot was flying by and he saw this. He landed his helicopter, and by that time the snake was gone, but he measured the approximate distance of it between these termite mounds, and he estimated the length of this snake was 165 feet long. We don't know. It's the only picture that's ever been taken of. This is a photograph taken of some sort of a creature in Hook Island near Queensland in 1965. I think I know what this is, but I'm not sure. Here's another picture. This is the picture of it, the head. These are the only 3 photographs that exist. I think it is a school of fish, not one fish, but thousands of fish altogether. But I don't know. I've only seen the 3 photographs. And there's been some cases of mistaken identity, like in 1970. In 1970, in the late afternoon, I was driving up Hadley Road and I heard over WBZ that a sea monster had come ashore on Man Lot Beach in Scituate. So naturally, I drove over. And I was a little late because the cars were all up and down Hadley Road, and went down the hill, down to Man Hill Beach, and everybody was there. There was Edward Rowe Snow was pointing out all the salient features, the tail of the creature, the flippers of the creature, the neck, and all kinds of people with their kids and parents. They couldn't figure out what it was. Some people said it looked just like the famous plesiosaurus that was prehistory. It was about the same size and the same shape, so it might have been that. In fact, that's what the kids said when they came to school the next day. They were sure that's what it was. But everybody was there. It was like a party atmosphere. I put this in Facebook the other day and asked for the names of if any of these people that recognize themselves. This was Bruce Dahlgren. That's the only one that I got a name for. But if you want me, I'll send you the picture and you can put the names in if you recognize anybody. Anyway, the next day, the Boston Herald Traveler came up with the news. The Loch Ness monster comes to Scituate. And there's Edward Rowe Snow, and there's the picture I just showed you. But unfortunately, the Globe threw cold water on it. Says, the stodgy old Globe says the Scituate Serpent could be a shark. Yeah. And the Patriot Ledger said the same thing. Could be a shark. But the kids, nobody knew quite what it was. The next day, the selectmen decided that they would bury it, and they got a bulldozer and they buried it. There's the crowd that's out to watch this. They buried it on Man Hill Beach. And as soon as they got it buried, they got a telegram from Woods Hole and the aquarium. They wanted to examine this creature and find out what it was. Well, they said, you're going to have to wait till spring when we'll dig it up again. Well, they tried to dig it up in the spring and they couldn't find it. It was gone. But it remains in memory because Bob Tilden, the then selectman, made it the cover of the 1970 town report for David Ball. David Ball says the carcass was buried by the DBW. The plan was to excavate it in the spring and move it to the aquarium, but winter storms had shifted the dune and they couldn't find it. So Robert H. Tilden was very proud of the picture and the cover. And that year, Scituate won the first place award for the best cover of a town report. But now in 1977, they dug this up off the coast of Japan. And they did save a piece of it. And they sent it to the museum and they found out that this was a basking shark. The basking shark looks something like this. The explanation that it was a basking shark was that this is what it would look like in the skeleton form. And this part was all eaten away by other sharks. And so this is what we saw. So we really didn't know what it was. But Bobo, who took a bite out of it, said it tasted just like chicken. Now we have a new report that came from the Bobby, who just came in. Bobby came up with this letter that was made for this report, I guess. Turns out that Murray Snow, who was selectman at the time, was down there early in the morning. And he saw it. Nobody else was there. He took out his knife and took a slab out of it, brought it back to the town hall, and put it in the oven, toasted it up. And he informed the Board of Health, and he called the police, the state police. And so the state police wanted him to come over and tell him the story. So he made tuna fish salad out of the piece that he took out of the monster. He called it, by the way, he wanted to call it Timmy the Whale. So off they went to the state police, and they sat down and they had a meal of tuna fish sandwiches. And after they ate it all, he told them, you just ate Timmy the Whale. Now, let me go back. I don't know if I can go back. I can't. These are reports that the Globe has had over the course of the years. This was a story in New Bedford, 1964. This is a report from the Globe. You notice it mentioned Vietnam down the bottom. Lynn, Mass, 1947. A Medford man saw the sea serpent pop up. A sea monster was seen in Nantucket in 1937. Newfoundland, off Newfoundland, 1936. It's not so blue vapor. Tale of a sea serpent off of Gloucester in 1920. Another tale of a sea, this is a tale by the Boston Globe that summarized all the recent reports of sea serpents and showed pictures of the ones that were reported and summarized it all. And he said, it was no myth, said science. Strange sea monster seen from the liner. This is off the Grand Banks in 1916. Real sea monster seen from the Flora M, 1914, off Cape Ann. The officer of the Meredidio saw a sea monster off Santos in Portugal. Off Swampscott in 1899, an aged fisherman saw the nothing of like nature has ever been seen before by him. Horned monsters of the deep. This is off Gibraltar in the mid-Atlantic, 1897. These are all reports from the archives of the Globe. This is the most interesting one of all the stories. Two ships met in the middle of the Atlantic, and the captain of one of them talked to the captain of the other. And he said he had captured the sea serpent, and he has it on ice in the hold. And he's telegraphed New York, and he's got in touch with the museum, and it's going to be on display in New York just as soon as he makes land. Unfortunately, the boat was never heard of again. That went down with all hands, and it was never reported in. This is another summary in 1886 of all the authentic sea monsters, showing pictures that people had drawn of the sea monsters over the years. And this is some pictures that people had drawn of sea serpents over the years, off Nahant, off Deer Island, I don't know, off Rockport. They look alike. They have a lot in common. They have bumps along the back, a head of a horse, and the body of a snake. If you ever gone to the Museum of Fine Arts in Boston, you'll see this painting that was done. There's another one similar to it that's in the Metropolitan Museum of Art, and this is the Cape Cod Sea Circle. Now, I want to talk about this area. There's Cape Ann, there's Scituate, and there's Provincetown. I want to talk about Stillwagon Bank, which is right off Scituate, and that's why we have the NOAA building in Scituate. They examine everything that goes on in the Stillwagon Bank. But I really want to talk about the reason that, I forgot this, the reason this is important is because it's a huge growth of plankton that comes up every year in the Stillwagon Bank. And it's the primary food, not the primary food, but one of the foods of whales. And that's what makes this area the best whale watching area in the world. But I want to talk about this area over here. This is Cape Ann and Gloucester Harbor. Gloucester Harbor. Let me see if I got it. Gloucester Harbor, where has places like Rocky Neck, 10-Pound Island, you've probably heard of that. You've heard of Norman's Woe, where the Hesperus was wrecked. And there was a poem written about it, The Wreck of the Hesperus. Well, let me get the date. 1817, two women were walking along Rocky Neck, and they saw a fishing boat. They were watching a fishing boat come in, and they also saw a sea serpent right in this area. But there was only two women and this crew of the fishing boat. So when they came ashore and they told people about it, nobody really believed them. The next day, Mr. and Mrs. Story, Mrs. Swanson, William Roy, Susan Stover, and her father also walked around here and saw the sea serpent cavorting out this way and down in here. The next day, Captain Solomon Allen saw it right out in the middle near 10-Pound Island. He was a real captain had been on the ocean. And so when he told the story, along with these other people began to believe it. The next day, Captain Allen and a bunch of other people saw it, and they gathered all around the edge of the wharves and the edge of the harbor, and they saw it. A lot of people, many people saw it. In fact, that's what it looks like. One of the guys, Matthew, what was his name? I can't remember. Came out with a gun and fired at the sea serpent. And he said he hit it. That night, people went down and watched it from the seacoast, and they saw the sea serpent cavorting. Hundreds of people had seen it. Hundreds of people. And now, this day, the crew of the Hazard and other people went from Kettle Island, and they saw it. So these are the areas where the sea serpent was observed. The next day, they saw 2 sea serpents. And by this time, people were all crowded around the edge of the ocean to watch this. So it was observed by hundreds of people. Hundreds of people saw this. And that's where the 2 sea serpents were seen over here. And by the 18th, it was seen by William Pearson, J. Collins, T. Hand, Colonel Perkins, remember that name, and hundreds of other people. By now, the sea serpent had been observed by 200 to 500 people all at once. It wasn't individual people. It were people standing beside each other and commenting on it. Colonel Thomas H. Perkins, who was the merchant of Boston, also saw it. And he's a very famous man. He was a member of the Great and General Court, and he also went on to be a representative in Congress. So he was really, his name and his word was respected. It's not like today when we have a member of a Congress or a president tell you a story, we obviously don't believe it. Here's they put out a broadside, and they said the monstrous sea serpent, the largest ever seen in America, just made its appearance, seen by hundreds of respectable citizens. People began to see it. All in all, it was seen by 500 to 1,000 observers, all up and down the coast. This is the various areas where it was seen. And this was over the course of about 18 days. People could make a date, and they would go out to say, let's go see the sea serpent. And this time, it wasn't like Scituate when it was dead. This was an alive sea serpent. And of course, on August 18th, there were 2 sea serpents that were observed. So here are some pictures. This is the picture that they put in one of the pictures they put in the scientific digest that they put out about this. They hired an artist to capture it. This one is a little bit crazier, but it was also supposed to be the same picture, same sea serpent. Now, they wanted to treat this scientifically because this was the age of the Enlightenment, and they didn't want to just take people's word for it. But they needed a specimen, so they tried to find an example of it. They tried to capture the sea serpent. They couldn't. But a couple boys found this dead snake, and they thought it might have been a sea serpent because it was bumpy along the back. They brought it to a Harvard Medical School professor, and he named it this Latin name, which I won't attempt to pronounce. And they declared this was a baby of the sea serpent, all right? So the committee got together. They got 25 people that had seen it together, all high-born, respectable people. They took they asked them all the same questions, and they put it into a magazine. And this was the Linnaean Society of New England. This wasn't just a bunch of people. This was Linnaeus was the scientist that classified animals. And this was many Harvard professors were on this committee. But a problem arose. Upon further review, this was found to be a diseased black snake. It was not the sea serpent's baby. So what happens was this entire study was failed and it fell apart. But the problem is those people saw something. Just because this scientific experiment, the scientific booklet failed, it didn't mean that the serpent didn't exist. People saw it. Then in June 1819, the serpent came back. It was seen off Race Point. It was seen off Race Point from the sloop Concord. Let me get some notes here. Hang on, will you a minute? Okay. Okay, I'll be with you in a minute. Okay. 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 Okay, here we are. This is the actual, I have to read some of this. Was seen off Race Point at about 5 o'clock in the morning. Commander Wheeler and Gershom Bennett described the most detailed and reliable sighting yet. He said, I saw a serpent of enormous size and uncommon appearance upon the water. His head was about 7 feet above the surface of the water. The color of the animal was black, and the surface appeared to be smooth, without scales. His head was about as long as a horse's, and was a proper snake's head. There was a degree of flatness and a light hollow in the top of his head. His eyes were prominent and stood out considerably from the surface, resembling in that respect, the eyes of a toad. So that's when that was seen, June 6th. Next, it was seen off Duxbury in Marshfield by an ambitious 27-year-old lawyer and his friend who were out fishing. Here's a young portrait of the young lawyer. He said to his friend, don't ever tell anybody about this. I want to be a lawyer. And if it turns out you and I saw a sea serpent, I'll be the laughingstock of New England. And I want to be a successful lawyer. So I swear you to secrecy for the rest of your life, or the rest of my life. And he held that secret for 60 years until this young man died. This young man grew up to be Daniel Webster. And this incident was expanded into a tall tale by Stephen Vincent Benet, Daniel Webster and the Sea Serpent. And you can get this online, and it's funny. Benet really expanded on it and made a good joke out of it. But it was fun. And the more he thought about Daniel Webster, he expanded his study of Daniel Webster into The Devil in Daniel Webster, which is a great play. And I happen to have seen that play in Boston, and it's funny and it's great. Good play. Now, there it is off in June 11 and 12th, it was seen off Cohasset. This is in June through August 1819. And then the serpent came to Scituate. It was observed off Scituate in June 30th. And then it continued up and down Massachusetts Bay. It was seen off Castle Island. Wait a minute, I get it. And then off Nahant in August 12th. And in 1823, it was seen off Plymouth. 1840, again off Cohasset. And then 1883 up by Minot's Light, and off Cohasset again in 1905. 10 years later, the serpent returned to Scituate. This report, published in the Boston Sunday Herald, sounds like this. It talks about, let me get the names in front of it. He says, whenever there appears a suggestion of a sea serpent in the public print, two sorts of people begin to scoff. These are the scientists who insist that there is no such thing, and the skeptics who immediately look for the name of a summer hotel in the story, scenting the ubiquitous press agent. But there's no hotel advertising on this page, and anyone, scientific or otherwise, who insists that the sea serpent is non-existent has to only walk down to Otis Wharf in Boston. Now, in Otis Wharf, the Gurnet was a small steam ferry that went back and forth to Scituate. Any non-believer should talk to Edward E. Edison, the captain of the steamer Gurnet. Captain Edison has seen one, and he knows. And he will be borne out by Quartermaster Roy Litchfield, who also cited the Leviathan. And they copied it down and they put it in the log. And if you know, anything that's written in the log must be true. And that settles it. This is what the sea serpent looked like when it was seen off Barker's Hill. It went past Black Rock, and that's what it was said to look like. And this is what it looked like to Captain Edison. And there's another version of it. There we go. Oh, let me get back. Captain Edison said, you've seen a big freighter coming to light with a screw half out of the water, and the way she'll throw water. Well, that's the way this sea serpent did, and she threw some steam. Yes, I tell you this, when that sea serpent saw we was going to cut her in two, she didn't change her course, but she gave herself 4 bells and a jingle, and she walked right past us. And don't you forget it, she flew. That long black mane stuck out straight from the back of her neck like a pennant on a yacht, and she rolled her eyes horrible, and the drool was running off her cruel mouth like foam. She was wicked. Yes, sure, she was wicked. I picked up a belaying pin and walked forward and aimed that belaying pin down across her stern, but before I could hit her, she was 9 fathoms away. She was a sailing. The Herald wraps up the story by writing, but Captain Edison sticks to his tail, and Roy the quartermaster sticks to his, and there it stands. Still, anyone who has doubts has only to go down to Otis Wharf and take the Gurnet to Scituate. On the way down, make friends with Captain Edison, and perhaps he'll show you the log. Perhaps he'll show you the log. There it is in black and white, and a ship's log has to be believed. In spite of the more sensational details of this creature's appearance, the story is probably essentially true, and it'll be 6 years before there's another. So ends the Herald's story. It turns out it was 55 years before we saw another. But if you're out, I'm going to go through this, and I have something to show you. These are the books that I took this out of. And these are books I got at the Scituate Library, and they're available still today. Wait, there's more. If you're looking out to the ocean, you never know. Keep your eyes peeled, and you just might see a sea serpent. You never can tell.
Anybody have any questions? You want to raise your hands or just unmute yourself?
Just unmute yourself and holler it out.
Actually, I've got to unmute you or tell you to unmute. So, okay. Right ahead.
Go.
Dietrich?
Is there a correlation with the weather when these, especially the serpents, are being seen? Whether the water is flat or whether it's choppy, and whether you.
It seems to be seen in calm water.
At.
It seems to be seen in calm water, and what's interesting is that many of the reports have great differences between them. But one of the things that they have in common, that it was like a caterpillar. It was up and down like the cartoon that I do. It had a head of a horse. Now, not a real horse. A head was similar to it. They constantly said it was brown in color. They said it was fast. It moved very fast and threw up a wake. It said it was friendly. It didn't attack anyone. Even the guy that shot it, he thought he hit it. And it dived down underneath the boat, and nothing was ever found. It didn't seem like he was really hit. Those are similar stories. Those are the similarities in the stories. But the stories vary by a lot of details. Anybody else?
Yeah, I do. Matt.
Yes.
First of all, Matt, I loved it. I got to give Matt a big round of applause. I loved it. So
Let
Matt,
me tell you a little story before we start.
I got a question for you first.
I got to just tell you this.
Oh, tell me.
I lost half my preparation.
No.
And the thing that I put up was an old one.
Oh.
If there's anything that could go wrong, it went wrong. But I'm glad you were a good audience.
We
You didn't
never knew. We never knew it went wrong.
No.
Oh my God, it was great. How
Well,
about,
thank you.
seriously, well, whatever you left out, you could come back again and tell us about it.
It's probably all different.
If you find your paperwork. But listen, what about the age of these things? I mean, like how, well, was it the same one that was going around the town, going around?
My guess is, it went up in Gloucester, the first time it was seen,
Yeah.
I believe it was the same one, because they were relatively similar, the stories. And then on the other hand, some person saw two, but it could have been the same one, all twisted and tangled around. You have to take a lot of this with a grain of salt. But what you can't take with a grain of salt is over 1,000 people saw it. It's not like one person at a time or two people at a time. People stood beside each other and said, "Did you see that? Look at that over there. Look, that's one." And so, if you have two people, you can make up a story. If you have 5 people, you can make up a story. But you can't do it with 1,000 people. And these people, they were not like they are today. These people, they believed, they went to church every day. They believed the Bible. You cannot bear false witness. They weren't lying.
Oh
They were different.
Oh my God.
I have a question.
We have a question.
There are conger eels in
Conger
the
eels.
in the waters of Scituate and going up to Cape Ann. Could it possibly be that kind of fish?
A Congo eel. He said
Oh,
that
yes.
Congo eels. That could
Congo eels are nowhere as big as that.
They're not as big.
There is a fish called an oarfish that, do you remember the picture of the old guys with mustaches and the tree limb that they made look like a fish, the fake?
Yeah.
Well, an oarfish looks a lot like that. But it doesn't go in the water. It doesn't swim like this. And it's also, it swims very deep in the ocean. It could be mistaken for one though.
Okay. Other questions, anybody? I hate to have this end. I loved it.
Well, the story of sea serpents is nothing but questions. We haven't, it's nothing but questions.
True.
My question is, how could those 500 to 1,000 people have seen the same thing? How could that been observed by so many people? That is never going to be answered because it was a long time ago. But that's a fascinating story, and I got it out of those books. And since it was in print and not on the internet, it's probably true.
And don't forget, it's in the log. Very important.
Yeah, it's in the logs, right?
Log.
Yeah.
Oh my God. Matt, you're the best. Honest to God, I've enjoyed tremendously.
Well, you've been a wonderful audience.
Oh, you have. Anybody else?
Yeah.
Go ahead. Another question?
Go ahead, we'll keep this going. What do you got?
Was there another one? Nancy, did you say something? I don't know. I might have missed it.
No.
No. Okay. Well, anyway, Matt, I know that you have a repertoire of other stories because I have seen you and enjoyed yourself. We're not saying goodbye to you, okay?
Okay, sure.
I loved it, and thank you so much. And just before we close, I just want to say that on the 24th of May, Michael, are you there, Michael Johnson? Mike.
Yes, I am.
Could you just give us a very brief description of the program that's coming on the 24th of March?
Yeah, we're very privileged to have 2 film producers, husband and wife, John Mahalchek and Susan Mahalchek from Boston College, and they're going to be screening their film Nazi Law, Legally Blind, about the rise of the Nazi Party in Germany and how they took over the court system. And we'll be sending around the actual full film that people can watch before their presentation. They'll be showing film clips and discussing the historical events around that film.
Thank you. That'll be the same time. And Matt, I know we will see you again.
I'll be glad to.